Alright guys, I know we normally play first-person shooters, but going on this week, there is actually a new game that just dropped on us. It's a free-to-play game, and it's essentially like Monster Hunter in so many ways, but it's married up to like the graphics from Fortnite. Actually, some of the graphics, I see similarities between it and its style and, say, Blizzard in some of their games, and even something like World of Warcraft. Today, guys, we're going to talk about Dauntless, what this game is trying to do, what I think about it, how it's performing this week, and of course, is this game going to have staying power? Is this the type of game that can go head-to-head with Monster Hunter, especially since Monster Hunter has a big expansion coming this September? And will it have staying power just in general? Like, do people even want to play a game like Dauntless? So first up, what is Dauntless? So essentially, it's a looter, like a true looter. You go out, you slay monsters. Upon slaying monsters, depending on how you kill them, you will then gain components from that monster, or in this case, behemoths. You then would take that material, head back to Ramsgate, which is like the social area, and then craft that material into armor pieces, weapons, all kinds of things to allow you to kill either that same monster quicker, or at least give you a fighting chance against higher level behemoths. That's pretty much the goal. Now, of course, this gets much easier if you've got a full squad together, which takes me to one of the greatest things that Dauntless has done here. They have allowed for cross-play, which is of course Epic Games here, which is making all the moves, but you'll notice icons by people's names, and your party can consist of Xbox people, PlayStation people, PC people, so finding people to actually get a crew together to go hunt down these monsters is not an issue. Really, the big issue is the fact that the servers are so overwhelmed with the amount of people playing this game that queue times are ridiculous right now. I think here already in the past 24 hours, Dauntless has broken 4 million players, and that number is only increasing because of course it's available on all platforms and it's free to play. Now let's talk about the combat, because that's what I feel like is going to be a big selling point for a lot of people. So I played a lot of Monster Hunter last year. We put like close to 150 hours into it. I liked Monster Hunter, but I always felt kind of slow. And I'm not talking about just like the combat itself. It just means like reaction speed wise, things didn't feel as fluid or as quick or snappy as you see here with this Dauntless gameplay. And I had a pretty nasty glaive build on Monster Hunter, and even that build doesn't seem as quick or snappy as the Dauntless gameplay in front of you. And it's that quick because the monsters you're actually going against are very quick. You see all the various different attacks they try to hit you with. They definitely try to mess with your camera angle by like getting up in the sky to where you can't really see where they're coming from. And it's almost got like a Dark Souls style approach to really sitting there and watching what the attack patterns of the monsters are. And straight up, if you are not leveled up to deal with certain monsters, or if you don't have a whole crew with you, especially on the heroic versions of some of these behemoths, they will wreck you so fast. But the reason why I make comparisons between this and Dark Souls, once you get an idea of how to navigate certain fights and get the attack sequence down of whatever it is that you're trying to fight, there's going to be tons of guides come out that is probably going to be like, take no damage challenge. You know what I mean? Where someone just absolutely wrecks one of the harder or hardest monsters without taking a single hit. Now, I know some people don't like that kind of style. I'm a big fan of it simply because as I'm gaining better and better gear and weapons, which is of course making me stronger, just getting straight fight knowledge is going to make you stronger and stronger. So it's a double whammy, man. It stacks on top of each other and allows you to become a bona fide badass at some point. Now, moving on to the weapon types. We've got axe, chain blades, hammer, Ostian repeaters, I think I'm saying that right, swords, and war pikes. Now, they all have pros and cons. Like axes does a really good job, of course, severing and breaking behemoth parts, and also deals bonus damage to wounded parts. Chain blades, which a lot of people are a big fan of, severs and breaks behemoth parts and deals bonus damage to wounded parts as well. Hammer, which is what I've been pretty much maining, deals very high stagger damage and can break behemoth parts. I'm a big fan of actually taking the consumable that also boosts my stagger damage and stacking it with hammer to get the knockdown on most behemoths. Ostian repeaters severs and breaks behemoth parts and deals bonus damage to those wounded parts. It also allows you to have a little more range, as they're essentially guns that allows you to kind of back up, but again, it has some very steep damage fall off, so you want to be almost on top of the behemoth when dealing damage. Swords, which is what everyone pretty much starts off with, severs and breaks behemoth parts and deals bonus damage to the wounded parts as well. War pikes wounds behemoth parts, enabling damage bonuses for cutting weapons. Now, all these weapons belong to one of three damage types: slashing, blunt, or piercing. Obviously, slashing is weapons that are like axes, chain blades, Repeaters actually fall into the same category for slashing, and so does swords. Blunt, however, there's really only one type of weapon that can do blunt damage, which is hammers, and piercing is for war pikes. Now, the elemental types for all of these weapons, and again, you really want to pay attention to this because depending on whatever it is you're fighting, they will already have built up resistance against certain elements and are going to be weak to others. So you want to change your loadout accordingly. And similar to Monster Hunter, you cannot change your loadout on the fly. Once you are in the hunt, whatever it is you're wearing, that's it, man. You just got to stick with that. But you got Blaze Power, Shock Power, Frost Power, Umbral Power, and Radiant Power. Now, Blaze Power, of course, is burn damage, Shock being lightning damage, Frost being that cold damage, but Umbral Power actually deals shadow-based damage to the targets, and Radiant Power deals light-based damage to the behemoth. Now, it's pretty cool once you actually reach a damage threshold with Blaze, Shock, or Frost Power. That's when you're actually able to apply the effect. So for Burn or Blaze here, you of course apply a damage over time for a short period of time once reaching that threshold. Shock damage, actually, when you reach that threshold, will actually cause the behemoth to collapse with paralysis, which is essentially the same as being staggered. And for Frost Power here, once you reach that damage threshold, the behemoth will be slowed down by ice. Now, I haven't played enough with teammates to know like what the best team composition is. We've always essentially stacked whatever it is that the behemoth is weakest to. So if it's just weaker to Blaze, of course we're all rocking Blaze weapons, but there may actually be a much better team composition that allows you to dip in on all of these different elemental types. But for new players, it's just always best to go with whatever the monster is weakest to. Now, let's talk about in-game and in-game builds. Does Dauntless have the high level builds that something like Monster Hunter has? So I actually got in touch with the developers. They sent me a build of the game that allowed me to essentially play with in-game builds. Now, this was of course completely separate from the servers that we play on together. This was just me by myself testing out things. So I got to see what in-game builds we'll be playing with on the horizon. And in terms of depth, it's got it, guys. For me specifically, since I rock hammer, I was having a huge problem with getting combos off. And you really want to take advantage of combos, guys, because they make a huge difference in terms of damage as well as synergizing with whatever it is that you're using. Some of these combos are actually listed. Some of them you just got to figure out on your own. Find out the sequence of attack patterns. Your weapon will actually like either light up or give a light to indicate that you're on the right path, and then hit another button and you should get a nice little combo attack off. For me on hammer, it was an issue with getting a combo off because the hammer is just so slow. So of course, my in-game build here, I boosted everything into attack speed. My lantern even allowed me to get 60% attack speed when activating it, and when dodging, I got like an extra 15% attack speed after dodging. So of course, stacking these things together allow me to get a set of attacks off faster, thus resulting in me activating my combo, which of course is that like slam there. And that slam is pretty cool because the slam essentially allows me to reload my hammer. And yes, my hammer actually has a cannon on the front of it. Doesn't have a lot of range, but it does pack a punch, especially if you can fully charge it. Now, some things that Dauntless doesn't teach you, some tricks of the trade, some pro tips. You can actually cancel your cannon shot, and you can also do this with other weapon types. But for me, if I'm charging my hammer and I get to the 4th charge there, if I dodge right at the last second, it will cancel that shot, but it will also save it in the chamber. So this allows me to get up close and immediately pull the trigger when I'm right up against the behemoth. That way I can get the full amount of damage. It's little things like this, these little tricks of the trade like I mentioned, that adds a lot of depth here to the game and is allowing us as players to just constantly be discovering new and better ways to play the game. I'm a big fan of it. I like it. I like not having everything presented in front of me and just figuring things out on our own. Now, with that being said, let's talk about stand power and why you would probably like to play Dauntless. First up, why you would like to play Dauntless. There was a ton of people I know that were interested in Monster Hunter, but something didn't grab them. I liked Monster Hunter, but it didn't keep me. It kept me for about 2-3 months, and that was about it. Others are still dedicated to it and play it on a regular basis, and it had a lot of cool features to it. Where Dauntless really separated itself was being that free-to-play version to allow people that was originally on edge there with Monster Hunter and that never really pulled the trigger those players are flocking to Dauntless to see what it's all about. On top of that, guys, just being crossplay in general makes it a huge win. Epic's able to make these kind of moves, and I guess being a free-to-play game allows them to have crossplay. Whatever the case, adding 4 million players in the past 2-3 days is nothing to bat an eye at. And everyone that I've talked to is very much enjoying Dauntless. I don't think I've heard anything negative outside of the queue times, and that's just because it takes so long to get into a hunt. And that is one thing I gotta complain about. The queue times to get into a hunt, even when you're trying to go in as a single player, for some reason takes so long, like 4 or 5 minutes. And I'm really not sure what the deal is with that. I don't know if Epic or Dauntless didn't anticipate how many people were gonna be playing this game and servers are just constantly overloaded, but queue times take a long time, as well as just getting into the game. Yesterday, I was trying to log in just to get some gameplay, and it said I was going to have an hour wait. I came back 20 minutes later, and it said 3 hours. So Epic really needs to cough up the dough here to allow everyone to access this game, especially going into the weekend right now, because it's pretty much blowing up on all platforms. Another complaint I have is I'm not allowed to cancel hunts. Now, maybe there is a way, but I have not figured out a way to cancel a hunt. Like, if I'm in a hunt, I'm not really upset if I can't cancel it, because I'm already in the hunt. I'm just gonna go ahead and follow through and kill whatever's in front of me. But even before I even get into the hunt and I'm just sitting back in Ramsgate in the social area trying to queue up for a hunt, say if I press the wrong hunt, as far as I know, I have not figured out a way to cancel it. It's super aggravating. So hopefully they'll have some fixes for that, and I know they've been issuing some patches out. I'm gonna look through those this weekend and see if there's anything in terms of just quality of life improvements. Now, moving on to the social area, the area in which you're gonna see other players walking around and whatever it is that they just recently killed and decided to wear. Very similar to how Monster Hunter does it. Now, I'm not really sure how many players can fit inside of Ramsgate for each like server. I've seen quite a few running around. Like, it's very, very active. It gives me a straight up MMO vibe though. Like, I haven't felt this way in a really long time in terms of just having that social MMO feel. And I know Monster Hunter had it, but I found a lot of people chatting much, much more inside of Dauntless. My only complaint about the social area is I'm not allowed to go in a lot of the buildings. It's such a letdown. Like, I love the art style. I really do. I'm a huge fan of this. I didn't think I was going to come around to it, but I really like it now. But what I'm annoyed with is I've got these really cool looking buildings that I can't even go into. Like, I'm always expecting to walk up to a door and being able to interact with it and go through and like visit a shop. I know that's just little stuff, but it's little things like that that adds to the social experience that I think a lot of people would have really liked, instead of just looking at a building there and talking to whatever NPC on the outside. So to wrap today's video up, let's talk about staying power. Does Dauntless have the potential to be a major hit? Well, I already think it's approached that. And if they can just get their servers and queue times under control, I think it's going to hit some record numbers very fast. And the way they're like monetizing things, they've got like this battle pass thing going on that rewards these pretty cool cosmetic items. They've got the same similar transmog system from like something like Final Fantasy that allows you to change up the look of your gear. Like, you can make your gear look like anything, which kind of throws me off, and it threw me off even when I play Final Fantasy. Like, I can make my hammer look like another hammer. In terms of armor, you can do the exact same thing. Now, some of them are bugged. Like, I had a Santa hat, I put it on, and my head disappeared, or the top of my head. So, yeah, they're not all working great, but you do have a ton of cosmetic items through that battle pass system. And if you want to get them immediately, you can actually like skip levels if you've got the money to put up and get those items right away. Now, as far as I know, this doesn't play a role at all in your overall Slayer level and your overall gear. Like, I've really been looking around for that pay to win, just trying to see, is it there? Because that's always a huge concern with any free-to-play game. Yes, we're all happy that it's a free game, but if it's like overwhelmed with pay to win, I don't know, to me, it just knocks the breath out of the game. So far with Dauntless, I have not seen major pay to win. It's just more of like pay to wear, pay to look good, pay to be sexy. That's pretty much the extent of it. So guys, that is Dauntless in its entirety. A pretty fun game so far. I very much enjoyed it. I was not expecting to get into another game similar to Monster Hunter. No lie though, I can see myself returning to this game a bunch and perfecting some builds for that in-game. So for me, it's got the staying power, guys, but we'll see. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.